Hi Group 3, welcome to Module 5, Lesson 1. You should have your binder open to the Lesson 1 problem set. It is 3 pages, but there's a lot of pictures here, so it just takes up a little bit more space. Don't let it scare you. Alright, so we are working with fractions, and as you might remember from Wednesday's lesson, a fraction is part of a whole. So in this first example, you could think of the whole as this whole beaker. A beaker is just kind of a cup that scientists use to measure things. So the whole is this beaker. And with fractions, we're talking about less than the whole, or parts of the whole. So if you look at number 1, it says a beaker is considered full when the liquid reaches the fill line shown near the top. So this little line is the fill line. Estimate the amount of water in the beaker by shading the drawing as indicated. The first one is done for you. So if you look at the first one, underneath it, it says 1/2. And can you see that half of the beaker is shaded in? So in other words, 1/2 looks like this. We have 2 total parts that we call halves, and one of them is shaded. Okay, so let's look at the next one. Now we need to shade 1/4. So when you look at this, the 4th is telling you how many total pieces. Okay, that's your bottom number. We call that the denominator. And you can look at that in your vocabulary section of your work, of your binder, to see that the denominator is the bottom number. It tells you how many total pieces there are. So I'm looking at this kind of like we did our tape diagrams. The whole section is from this fill line down to the bottom line. So if I break it in half, and I'm going to kind of use the half that they already drew for us to draw my first half, then I can divide those 2 halves in half to make 1/4. And I'm going to color in this bottom section. So when you look at it, is 1/4 smaller or larger than 1/2? Hopefully you said small. It's a lot smaller. Okay, so we just showed 1/4. And the last one is 1/3, which looks like this. 1/3. So 1/3 means there's 3 total pieces. So we have to find a way to break this into 3 equal pieces. And if you remember when you were folding your fraction strips on Wednesday, the thirds might not have been as easy as your half and your 4th. And so you'll find that some fractions are easier to draw than others. But we've done thirds in our tape diagram, so I'm just kind of going to eyeball it here and try to make 3 equal pieces. Remember, that's part of fractions, is you want the pieces to be equal. When you're looking at this beaker, you're not considering this very tiny part up at the top where it gets a little wider. That's not really part of what you're trying to partition out. Okay? All right, so here is 1/3. And really, when you look at it, your third should be a little bigger than your 4th. Mine's pretty close, but it should be a little bit bigger than your 4th, but not as big as your half. So it should look something like that. Does anybody notice anything, any sort of pattern here that's going on in terms of the denominator and the size of the fractional piece that's shaded? Think about that as we're working through these problems. All right, so number 2 says Juanita cut her string cheese into equal pieces as shown in the rectangles below. So each one of these rectangles is a piece of string cheese, a whole piece of string cheese. In the blanks below, use words to name the fraction of the string cheese represented by the shaded part. So we're focusing in on the shaded part. That's the colored in part. So if you look at it, think to yourself, how many sections are shaded? 1, right? So our fraction is going to start with the word 1. And how many pieces do we have in total? 1, 2, 3. So this fractional piece is called 1/3. We don't call it 1/3. The 3 becomes the word third, like 3rd grade. It means grade 3. Okay, look at the next one. We have 1 piece shaded again, so I'm going to write that word 1. I'm going to count up the total pieces, and this is including the one that's shaded. You need to know how many pieces make the whole string cheese. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that is called 1/6. And you made both of these in your fraction strips on Wednesday. Okay, last one. One piece is shaded again, so our first part of our fraction is 1. And then we count the full number of pieces it takes to make the whole thing. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. So we call that 1/4. Okay? And most fractional pieces end with that TH at the end. You can see we had 6 total pieces. We just put the TH. 4 total pieces. We just put the TH on the end. But thirds and halves are a little bit different. So you kind of have to memorize that 1/2 means there's 2 total pieces. We don't call it 1/2 when we're talking about 1/2. Okay, and we don't call it 1/3 if it's 1 out of 3 pieces. Okay? All right, let's go to the back. Number 3 says, split the rectangle below into 2 equal parts. All right, so we have to make some choices here. Then it says, how many lines did you draw to make 2 equal parts, and what is the name of each fractional unit? All right, so I'm looking at this rectangle. I'm just going to find where halfway is and draw my line. How many lines did we draw? 1. What is each one of those called? You can go back to your fraction strips, or maybe you already know that it is 1/2. Going to the next one, split the next rectangle into 3 parts. How many lines did we draw, and what is the name? So I'm back to drawing 3 parts. Think about when we did our tape diagrams. You want them to try to be as equal as you can get them. How many lines did we draw? Only 2. And what is the name of each one? 1/3. All right, and the last one in this section, split this rectangle into 4 equal parts. How many lines did you draw to make 4 equal parts, and what is the name of each fractional unit? So again, anytime I have something even, I always want to draw a line separating it into the 2 halves, and then I can divide those halves, just in an effort to make equal sections. So how many lines did we draw? 3, and maybe you're noticing a pattern here. I hope you are, in terms of the number of lines. So what do we call each one of these? Well, if there's 4 total sections, we call it 1/4. Okay, so now let's go to the last part. Number 4 says each rectangle represents 1 sheet of paper. So this is a sheet of paper, and this is a sheet of paper. Cut the paper into fractional units as indicated below. Oh boy, we have 7ths. Now that's one that we haven't done before, so we want to try our best to make 7 equal sections. And 7 is an odd number. These are always more difficult because you can't divide it in half and then get equal pieces. So we're going to try 7ths and 9ths, both challenging. Okay, and this is why you have erasers. So you might need to erase if they don't turn out too well. But you're looking for about this much space. 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh boy. I only have 6 in there, don't I? So I need to find a way to erase that. Okay, I found my eraser. So, I better get back to my pencil now. So I need to make mine a little smaller than I did. This is so shrunken. 1, 2, 3. It's hard with the way my stylus works to get it, but you see I have 7 sections now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So if you need to work on that, hit pause and get your 7 sections, and then work on 9ths, which is what I'm going to do now. So I realize if these spaces are this skinny, and I need 9 pieces, they're going to have to be even skinnier, aren't they? So let's see what happens here. 1, 2, 3. Okay. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9. I got them. Okay, so little skinny ones. So the next question says, what do you notice? How many lines do you think you would draw to make a rectangle with 20 equal parts? And I don't know what this is doing here. That's some sort of goof up. But think about it. The question they're really asking here is how many lines do I need to have 20 parts? So let's go back. How many lines did we draw when we had sevenths? We drew 6 lines. How many lines did we draw with ninths? 8 lines. Look back up here on this page. We had 2 pieces, we drew 1 line. 3 pieces, we drew 2 lines. 4 pieces, we did 3 lines. So there's your pattern there. So hopefully what you have noticed is that, and we know this from tape diagrams, we drew 1 less line than the number of fractional units. Okay, so in other words, 1 less line than the number of pieces I needed. A rectangle with 20 parts needs 1 less than 20, 19 lines. Okay, so you should have all that written for the second part of number 4. All right. Once you have that, you can go on to the last question, number 5. It says, Rochelle has a strip of wood 12 inches long. She cuts it into pieces that are each 6 inches in length. What fraction of the wood is 1 piece? And it says, use your yellow strip from the lesson to help you. What they're talking about is your fraction pieces that you made on Wednesday. So ours are that green color. Draw a picture to show the piece of wood and how Rochelle cut it. So if you want to get your fraction strips out now, you can. You may or may not need them. But I'm going to draw a strip of wood. What do you know? It looks like a tape diagram. And I'm going to label that 12 inches because the problem tells me that. That's the first sentence. She cuts it into pieces that are each 6 inches in length. Okay? So I'm thinking to myself, how many 6-inch pieces can fit into 12? Well, I'm going to draw 1 line. If this is 6 inches, do I have enough room to put another piece of 6 inches in there without going past the total of 12? Yeah. I know 6 plus 6 is 12. So I've cut that piece of wood into 2 pieces. Is that the question they're asking? No. It says, what fraction of the wood is 1 piece? Okay? So I'm going to say 1 piece would be 1/2 of the whole strip. Okay? Because I'm just really focused on one of these pieces because they're asking me 1 piece. Well, if I've shaded in 1 out of 2 pieces, that's a half or 1/2. Okay? So hopefully this makes all kinds of good sense to you. If not, Miss Waldschmidt or Mrs. Carlson will be able to help you. Try Mrs. Carlson first because Miss Waldschmidt will be meeting with a group during the time you're working on the work. But after her group is done, you can ask her questions too. All right, have fun.